Alrighty, we're back. Sorry about that. Oh, wow. Warren Steele has not been this early to a party since 1999. Back when we knew how to party hardy. All right. Where were we? Oh, right. I was going to find the I was going to find the image. Text drifters. There we go. Backlist gallery. There it is. Which one is this? I think this is one of the Russian covers. Yeah? Yes. Oh, this is, yeah, okay, so there's several Russian covers. This is the cool one. The other one is cool, but for a different reason. The other one is just out there. This is by Yemelyanov from 2018, the 2018 edition of Starfish. Peter Watts says the cover for the latest Russian edition of Starfish, and in my opinion, by far the coolest, by Mikhail Yemelyanov. Mikhail, sorry. Um, and pretty thoroughly nails just about everything. A bunch of extra detail added to the copolymer skin suit that they use. Like the extra fin things added, which gives it this cool creature from the Black Lagoon look. I think this one's pretty neat. Also has, of course, a giant fishy beast in the background, as well as a BB station in the distance, the far distance, which gives it this cool otherworldly look. I'm all for it. There's another Russian cover, which I'll be doing, I guess, next week, which makes no sense, but is really cool. You'll see, you'll see. So this week is going to have to be a short one, partly due to scheduling conflicts, partly due to that's just how the book's broken up, and I realized before I was going to do multiple chunks, and before scheduling issues popped up, I was like, oh, okay. I realized, hey, I'm actually doing every single part of this is corresponds to the corresponding part of the book. So part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, and now part 5. So I was like, well, my OCD says don't break the pattern. And also, I have to leave early anyway. So I'm going to be leaving even earlier now, but it's fine. So previously on, I think was Eve Scanlon's Wild Ride. Yes, it was Eve Scanlon's Wild Ride. He came down to check out the Rifters on BB Station to do a bit of a checkup, see how they're doing. What's their state of mind? What's their behavior like since they've lost like 3 people? Well, two people. Um, how are they handling the pressure? Well, just fine without him, thanks. Is basically what it boils down to. Also, some strange doings involving poisoning the absolute bejesus out of a fish sample. Um, I wonder what that's all about. I wonder if that will be revealed in the fullness of time. Time. It will. It absolutely will. This time, though, I don't think we're going to have much of that revealed. That's not till later. A whole lot of the Revelation stuff happens late, 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 late in the game. Actually, it'll be next week. Next week is when a lot of it's going to be revealed. And what isn't revealed next week will be revealed the week after. What I'm thinking of doing, because the final installment, and when my schedule incidentally frees up enough so that I can do a segment that's like 50 pages long, um, what I'm thinking of doing is having a bonus 10th part, some ninth part. Having a bonus ninth part where I do the acknowledgements, the not the acknowledgements, but the afterword, as well as a bonus short story. Um, we'll see how scheduling goes. and I'll deal with it accordingly. So, short one this week, short one next week, long one after that, depending. Alrighty, let's get cracking. Part 5, Sane, like the river. S-E-I-N-E. I think I pronounced that correctly. Or Sen. Sen River, whatever. Chapter 1, Entropy. Maybe things are getting out of hand, Lenny Clark wonders. The others don't seem to care. She hears Lubin and Karako talking up in the lounge, hears Brander trying to sing in the shower, as if we didn't all get enough abuse during our childhoods, and envies their unconcern. Everyone hated Scanlon. Well, not hate exactly. That's a bit strong. But there was at least a sort of contempt. That's the word. Contempt. Back on the surface, Scanlon ticked everyone. No matter what you said to him, he'd nod, make little encouraging noises, do everything to convince you that he was on your side. Except actually agree with you, of course. You didn't need fine tuning to see through that shit. Everyone down here already had too many Scanlons in their past. The official sympathizers, the instant friends who gently encouraged you to go back home, drop the charges, carefully pretending it was your interests being served. Back then, Scanlon was just another patronizing bastard with a shaved deck, and if fortune put him down here on Rifter turf for a while, who could be blamed for having a little fun with him? But we could have killed him. He started it. He attacked Jerry. He was holding him hostage. As if the GA's going to make any sort of allowance for that. So far, Clark's kept her doubts to herself. It's not that she fears no one will listen to her. She fears the exact opposite. She doesn't want to change anybody's mind. She's not out to rally the troops. Initiative is a prerogative of leaders. She doesn't want the responsibility. The last thing she wants to be, is leader of the pack, Len, head wolf, A fucking Kayla. Acton's been dead for months, and he's still laughing at her. Okay, Scanlon was a nuisance at worst. At best, he was an amusing diversion. Shit, Brander said once. You tune him in out there? I bet the GA doesn't even take him seriously. The grid needs them, and it's not going to pull the plug just because a few rifters had some fun with an asshole like Scanlon. Makes sense. Still, Clark can't help thinking about consequences. She's never been able to avoid them in the past. Brander's finally out of the shower. His voice drifts down from the lounge. Showers are an indulgence down here, hardly necessary when you live inside a self-flushing semi-permeable dive skin, but a sheer hot hedonistic pleasure just the same. Clark grabs a towel off the rack and heads up the ladder before anyone else can cut in. Hey, Len! Karako, seated at the table with Brander, waves her over. Check out the new look! Brander's in real shirt sleeves. He doesn't even have his caps in. His eyes are brown. Wow. Clark doesn't know what else to say. Those eyes look really strange. She looks around, vaguely uncomfortable. Lubin's over on the sofa, watching. What do you think, Ken? Lubin shakes his head. Why do you want to look like a dryback? Brander shrugs. Dunno. I just felt like giving my eyes a rest for a couple of hours. I guess seeing Scanlon down here in shirt sleeves all the time. Not that anyone would even think of popping their caps in front of Scanlon. Karako affects an exaggerated shudder. Please, tell me he's not your new role model. He wasn't even my old one, Brander says. Clark can't get used to it. Doesn't it bother you? Walking around naked like that? Actually, the only thing that bothers me is I can't see squat, unless someone wants to turn up the lights. So, anyway, Karako picks up the thread of some previous conversation. You came down here why? It's safe, Brander says, blinking against his own personal darkness. Uh-huh. Safer, anyway. You were up there not so long ago. Didn't you see it? I think what I saw up there was sort of skewed. That's why I'm down here. You never thought that things were getting, well, top-heavy? Karako shrugs. Clark, imagining steamy needles of water, takes a step towards the corridor. I mean, look how fast the net changed, Brander says. It wasn't all that long ago you could just sit in your living room and go all over the world, remember? Anywhere could link up with anywhere else for as long as they liked. Clark turns back. She remembers those days, vaguely. What about the bugs? She asks. There weren't any. Or there were, but they were really simple. Couldn't rewrite themselves, couldn't handle different operating systems. Just a minor inconvenience at first, really. But there were these laws they taught us in school, Karako says. Lenny remembers. Explosive speciation, Brooks laws. Brander holds up a finger. Self-replicating information strings evolve as a sigmoid difference function of replication error rate and generation time. Two fingers. Evolving information strings are vulnerable to parasitism by competing strings with sigmoid difference functions of lesser wavelength. 3. Strings under pressure from parasites develop random substring exchange protocols as a function of the wavelength ratio of the host and parasite sigmoid functions, or something like that. Karako looks at Clark, then back at Brander. What? Life evolves. Parasites evolve. Sex evolves to counter the parasites. Shuffle the genes so they have to shoot for a moving target. Everything else, species diversity, density dependence, everything, it all follows from those three laws. You get a self-replicating string past a certain threshold, it's like a nuclear reaction. Life explodes, Clark murmurs. Actually, information explodes. Organic life's just a really slow example. Happened a lot faster in the net. Karako shakes her head. So what? You saying you came down here to get away from bugs in the internet? I came down here to get away from entropy. I think, Clark remarks, you've got one of those language disorders, dyslexia or something. But Brander's going full tilt now. You've heard the phrase entropy increases? Everything falls apart eventually. You can postpone it for a while, but that takes energy. The more complicated the system, the more energy it needs to stay in one piece. Back before us, everything was sun-powered. All the plants were like they're these little solar batteries that everything else could build on. Only now we've got the society that's on an exponential complexity curve, and the net's on the same curve, only a lot steeper, right? So we're all balled up in this runaway machine. It's got so complicated, it's always on the verge of flying apart, and the only thing that prevents that all and the only thing that prevents that is all the energy we feed it. Bad news, Karako says. Clark doesn't think she's really getting the point, though. Good news, actually. They'll always need more energy, so they'll always need us, even if they ever do get fusion figured out. Yeah, but Karako is frowning all of a sudden. If you say it's exponential, then it hits a wall eventually, right? The curve goes straight up and down? Brander nods. Yup. But that's infinity. There's no way you could keep things from falling apart, no matter how much power we pump out. It'd never be enough, sooner or later. Sooner, says Brander, and that's why I'm staying right here. Like I said, it's safer. Clark looks from Brander to Karako to Brander. That is just so much bullshit. How so? Brander doesn't seem offended. Because we'd have heard about it before now, especially if it's based on some kind of physical law everyone knows about. They couldn't keep something like that under wraps. People would keep figuring it out for themselves. Oh, I think they have, Brander says mildly, smiling from naked brown eyes. They just rather not think about it too much. Where do you get all this, Mike? Clark asks. Clark asks. The library? He shakes his head. Got a degree. Systems ecology, artificial life. Clark nods. I always thought you were too smart to be a rifter. Hey, a rifter's the smartest thing to be right now. So you chose to come down here? You actually applied? Brander frowns. Sure, didn't you? I got a phone call, offered me this new high-paying career, even said I could go back to my old job if it didn't work out. What was your old job? Karako wonders. Public relations, mostly Honquarium franchises. You? Maybe I wasn't very good at it. What about you? Me? Karako bites her lip. It was sort of a deal. 1 year with an option to renew in lieu of prosecution. The corner of her mouth twitches. Price of revenge. It was worth it. Brander leans back in his chair, looks around Clark. What about you, Ken? Where'd you come? Clark turns to follow Brander's stare. The sofa's empty. Down the corridor, Clark can hear the shower door swinging shut. Shit. Still, it'll only be a short wait. Lubin's already been inside for 4 hours straight. He'll be gone in no time. And it's not as though there's any shortage of hot water. They should just shut the whole bloody net down for a while, Karako is saying behind her. Just pull the plug. Bugs wouldn't be able to handle that, I bet. Brander laughs, comfortably blind. Probably not. Of course, neither would the rest of us. World building, ding, ding, ding. Chapter 2. Carousel. She's been staring at the screen for 2 minutes, and she still can't see what Nakata's going on about. Ridges and fissures run along the display like long green wrinkles. The throat returns its usual echoes, crammed especially close to center screen because Nakata's got the range topped out. Occasionally, a small blip appears between two of the larger ones. Lubin, lazing through an uneventful shift. Other than that, nothing. Lenny Clark bites her lip. I don't see any. Just wait, I know I saw it. Brander looks in from the lounge. Saw what? Alice says she's got something bearing 320. Maybe it's Jerry, Clark muses. But Nakata wouldn't raise the alarm over that. It was just there! Nakata jabs her finger at the display, vindicated. Something hovers at the very edge of BB's vision. Distance and diffraction make it hazy, but to bounce any kind of signal at that range, it's got to have a lot of metal. As Clark watches, the contact fades. Not one of us, Clark says. It's big. Brander squints at the panel. His eye caps reflect through white slits. Muckraker? Clark suggests. A sub, maybe? Brander grunts. There it is again, Nakata says. There they are, Brander amends. Two echoes tease the edge of the screen now, almost indiscernible. Two large, unidentified objects, now rising just barely clear of the bottom clutter, now sinking back down into mere noise. Gone. Hey, Clark says, pointing. There's a tremor rippling along the seismo display, setting off sensors in a wave from the northwest. Nakata taps commands, gets a retrodict? Gets a retrodict bearing on the epicenter. 320. There is nothing scheduled to be out there, she says. Nothing anyone bothered to tell us about, anyway. Clark rubs the bridge of her nose. So who's coming? Brander nods. Nakata shakes her head. I'll wait for Judy. Oh, that's right. She's going all the way today, isn't she? Surface and back? Yes, she should be back in maybe an hour. Okay. Wait. Oh, I guess the previous voice was Brander? Oh, that's right. She's going all the way today, isn't she? Surface and back? Yes, she should be back in maybe an hour. Okay. Brander's on his way downstairs. Clark reaches past Nakata, and taps it. Clark reaches past Nakata and taps into an outside channel. Hey, Ken, wake up. I tell myself I know this place, she muses. I call this my home. I don't know anything. Brander cruises just below her, lit from beneath by a seabed on fire. The world ripples with color, blues and yellows and greens so pure it almost hurts to look at them. A dusting of violet stars coalesces and sweeps across the bottom, a school of shrimp, royally luminous. Has anyone been? Clark begins, but she feels wonder and surprise from Brander. It's obvious he hasn't seen this before. And Lubin, it's news to me, Lubin answers aloud, as dark as ever. It's gorgeous, Brander says. We've been down here how long, and we never even knew this place existed. Except Jerry, maybe. Every now and then, BB's sonar picks someone up in this direction, when everyone else is accounted for. Not this far out, of course, but who knows how far afield Fisher, or whatever Fisher's become, wanders these days. Brander drops away from his squid and coasts down, one arm outstretched. Clark watches him scoop something off the bottom. A faint tingle clouds her mind for a moment, that indefinable sense of some other mind working nearby, and she's past him, her own squid towing her away. Hey, Len, Brander buzzes after her. Check this out. She releases the throttle and arcs back. Brander's got a glassy, jointed creature in the palm of his hand. It looks a bit like that shrimp Acton found, back when... Don't hurt it, she says. Brander's mask stares back at her. Why would I hurt it, if I just wanted you to see its eyes? There's something about the way Brander's radiating. It's as though he's a little bit out of sync with himself, somehow, as though his brain is broadcasting on two bands at once. Clark shakes her head. The sensation passes. It doesn't have eyes, she says, looking. Sure it does, just not on its head. He flips it over, uses thumb and forefinger to pin it upside down against the palm of his other hand. Rows of limbs, legs maybe, or gills, scramble uselessly for purchase. Between them, where joints meet body, a row of tiny black spheres stare back at Lenny Clark. Weird, she says. Eyes on its stomach. She's feeling it again, a strange, almost prismatic sense of fractured awareness. Brander lets the creature go. Makes sense, seeing as how all the light down here comes from below. Suddenly he looks at Clark, radiating confusion. Hey, Len, you feeling okay? Yeah, I'm fine. You seem kinda splat, they say, simultaneously. Realization. She doesn't know how much of it is hers and how much she's tuning in from Brander, but suddenly they both know. There's someone else here, Brander says, unnecessarily. Clark looks around. Lubin. She can't see him. Shit, you think that's it? Brander's scanning the water, too. You think old Ken is finally starting to tune in?
I don't know. Who else could it be? I don't know. Who else is out here? Mike? Lenny?
Whoops. Mike, Lenny. Lubin's voice, faintly, from somewhere ahead. Clark looks at Brander. Brander looks back.
Right here.
Brander calls, edging his volume up.
I found it.
Lubin says, invisibly distant. Clark launches off the bottom and grabs her squid. Brander's right beside her, sonar pistol out and clicking.
Got him,
He says after a moment.
that way.
What else?
Dunno. Big anyhow. 3, 4 meters. Metallic.
Clark tweaks the throttle. Brander follows. A riot of fractured color unspools below them.
There.
Ahead of them, a mesh of green light sections. Whoops. A mesh of green light sections the bottom into squares.
What? Lasers,
Brander says.
I think.
Emerald threads float perfectly straight, a luminous profusion of right angles a few centimeters off the bottom. Beneath them, drab metal pipes run along the rock. Tiny prisms erupt at regular intervals along their length, like spines. Each prism an interstice. From each interstice, 4 beams of coherent light, and four, a wire-frame checkerboard overlaid against bedrock. They cruise 2 meters over the grid.
I'm not sure,
Brander grates.
but I think it's all just one beam, reflected back across itself.
Mike,
I see it.
he says. At first, it's just a fuzzy green column resolving out of the middle distance. Nearness brings clarity. The beams crisscrossing the ocean floor converge in a circle here, bend vertically up to form the luminous bars of a cylindrical cage. Within that cage, a thick metal stalk rises out of the seabed. A great disk flowers at its top, spreads out like some industrial parasol. The spokes of laser light stream down from its perimeter and bounce endlessly away along the bottom.
It's like a carousel.
Clark buzzes, remembering an old picture from an even older time.
Without horses. Don't block those beams.
Lubin buzzes. He's hanging off to one side, aiming a sonar pistol at the structure.
They're too weak to hurt you unless you get it in the eye, but you don't want to interfere with what they're doing. And that is?
Brander says. Lubin doesn't answer. What in the world? But Clark's confusion is only partly directed at the mechanism before her. The rest dwells on a disorienting sense of alien cognition, very strong now, not her, not Brander, but somehow familiar. Ken, that you?
This isn't what we saw on Zonar.
Brander's saying. Clark feels his confusion even as he talks over it.
Whatever we saw was moving forward. Whatever we saw was probably planting this,
Lubin buzzes.
It's long gone by now. But what is?
Brander's voice trails down to a mechanical croak. No, it's not Lubin. She knows that now.
It's thinking,
She says.
it's alive.
Lubin's got another instrument out now. Clark can't see the visual readout, but its telltale tick, 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 ticking carries clearly through the water.
It's radioactive,
He says. Alice Nakata's voice comes to them in the endless darkness between Bibi and the land of the carousel. Judy, it whispers, almost too faint to make out. Scatter, lake.
Alice?
Clark's got her vocoder cranked loud enough to hurt her own ears.
We can't hear you. Say again.
Just no sign.
Clark can barely distinguish the words. Somehow, though, she can hear the fear in them. A small tremor shudders past, raising clouds of mud and swamping Nakata's signal. Lubin throttles up his squid and pulls away. Clark and Brander follow suit. Somewhere in the darkness ahead, BB draws closer in decibel fractions. Decibel fractions. The next words they hear manage to cut through the noise.
Judy's gone.
Gone?
Brander echoes.
Gone where?
She just disappeared.
The voice hisses softly from every direction.
I was talking to her. She was up above the deep scattering layer. I was telling her about the signal we saw, and she said she saw something too, and then she was gone.
Did you check sonar?
Lubin wants to know.
Yes, yes, of course I checked sonar.
Nakata's words are increasingly clear.
As soon as she was cut off, I checked, but I saw nothing for sure. There was something, maybe, but the scattering layer is very thick today. I could not be sure. And it's been 15 minutes now, and she still hasn't come back.
Sonar wouldn't pick her up anyway,
Brander says softly.
not through the DSL.
Lubin ignores him.
Listen, Alice, did she say what she saw?
No, just something, she said, and then I heard nothing more.
Your sonar contact. How big?
I don't know. It was just there for a second, and the layer.
Could it have been a sub? Alice.
I don't know,
The voice cries, disembodied and anguished.
Why would it? Why would anyone?
Nobody answers. The squids race on. Chapter 3. Ecdysis. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Ecdysis. Ecdysis. Ecdysis? I'm going to go with my first one. If I'm wrong, great. If I'm right, great. I'd like to know either way. They dump her out of the airlock, still caught in the tangle web. She knows better than to fight under these conditions, but the situation's got to change pretty soon. She thinks they may have tried gassing her in the lock. Why else would they leave their headsets on after the lock had drained? What about that faint hiss that lasted a few seconds too long after blowdown? It's a pretty subtle cue, but you don't spend most of a year on the Rift without learning what an airlock sounds like. There was something a bit off about that one. No matter. You'd be surprised how much O2 can be electrolyzed from just the little bit of water left sloshing around in the old thoracic plumbing. Judy Carrico can hold her breath until the cows come home, whatever the fuck that means. And now, maybe they think their gas chamber that blows like an airlock has got her doped or unconscious or just very laid back. Maybe now they'll take her out of this fucking net. She waits, limp. Sure enough, there's a soft electrical cackle, and the web falls away. That's probably supposed to be crackle. All those sticky molecular tails polarizing flat like Velcro slicking down to cat fur. Let's try that sentence again. She waits, limp. Sure enough, there's a soft electrical cackle, and the web falls away, all those sticky molecular tails polarizing flat, like Velcro slicking down to cat fur. She stares out through glassy, unblinking eye caps, no cues they can read there, and counts 3, with maybe more behind her. They're zombies or something. Their skin looks rotten with jaundice. Fingernails are barely distinguishable from fingers. Faces are slightly distorted, blurred behind stretched yellowish membrane. Waxy, dark ovals protrude through the film where their mouths should be. Body condoms. Karako realizes after a moment. What is this? Do they think I'm contagious? And after a moment. And a moment later, am I? One of them reaches towards her, holding something like a handgun. She lashes out with one arm. She'd rather have kicked, more strength in the legs, but the ref suckers that brought her in didn't bother taking off her flippers. She connects. A nose, it feels like. A nose under latex. A satisfying crunch. Someone's found sudden cause to regret their own presumption. There's a moment's shocked silence. Karako uses it, flips onto her side, and swings one flippered foot backwards, heel first, into the back of someone's knee. A woman cries out. A startled face topples past, a smear of red hair plastered against its cheek, and Judy Karako is reaching down to get those big clown-foot flippers off in time to... The tip of a shock prod hovers 10 centimeters from her nose. It doesn't waver a millimeter. After a moment's indecision, how far can I push this, anyway? Karako stops moving. Get up, says the man with the prod. She can barely see, through the condom, shadows where his eyes should be. Slowly, she takes off her fins and stands. She never had a chance, of course. She knew that all along. But they obviously want her alive for something, or they never would have bothered bringing her on board. And she, in turn, wants to make it clear that these fuckers are not going to intimidate her, no matter how many of them there are. There's catharsis to be had, even in a losing fight. There's catharsis to be had in even a losing fight. Calm down, the man says. One of 4 she sees now, including the one backing out of the compartment with a red stain spreading under his caul. We're not trying to hurt you, but you know you shouldn't have tried to leave. Leave? His clothes, all of their clothes, are uniform but not uniforms. Loose-fitting white jumpsuits with an unmistakable look of disposability. No insignia. No name tags. Karako turns her attention to the sub itself. Now we're going to get you out of that dive skin, the prod master continues, and we're going to give you a quick medical workup. Nothing too intrusive, I assure you. Not a large craft, judging by the curvature of the bulkhead, but fast. Karako knew that from the moment it resolved out of the murk above her. She didn't see much, then, but she saw enough. This boat has wings. It could lap an orca on steroids. Who are you guys? She asks. Your cooperation would make us all very grateful, Prodmaster says, as if she hasn't spoken. And then maybe you can tell us exactly what you're trying to escape from out here in the middle of the Pacific. Escape? Karako snorts. I was doing laps, you idiot. Uh-huh. He returns his shock prod to a holster on his belt, leaves one hand resting lightly on the handle. The gun is back, in different hands. It looks like a cross between a staple gun and a circuit tester. The redhead pushes it firmly onto Karako's shoulder. Karako controls the urge to push back. A faint electrical tingle and her dive skin drops away in pieces. There go her arms. There go her legs. Her torso splits like a molting insect and drops away, short-circuited. She stands utterly skinned, surrounded by strangers. A naked mulatto woman looks back at her from a mirror on the bulkhead. Somehow, even stripped, she looks strong. Her eyes, brilliant white in that dark face, are cold and invulnerable. She smiles. That wasn't too bad, was it? That wasn't too bad, was it? There we go. There's a trained kindness to the other woman's voice. Almost like I didn't just dump her on the deck. They lead her through a passageway to a table in a compact med cubby. The redhead places a membrane-sheathed hand on Karako's arm, her touch just slightly sticky. Karako shrugs it off. There's only room for 2 others in here besides Karako. 3 squeeze in. The redhead, the prodmaster, and a shorter male, a bit chubby. Karako looks at his face, but she can't see details under the condom. I hope you can see out of that thing better than I can see in. Oh, I hope you can see out of that thing better than I can see in, she says. A soft background humming, too monotonous to register until now, rises subtly in pitch. There's a sense of sudden acceleration. Karako staggers a bit, catches herself on the table. If you could just lie back, Miss Karako. They stretch her out on the table. The chubby male pastes a few leads at strategic points along her body and proceeds to take very small pieces out of her. No, this isn't good. Not at all. Cantonese accent. Poor epithelial turgor. You know dive skin's only an expression. You weren't supposed to live in it. The touch of his fingers on her skin, like the redhead's, thin, sticky rubber. Now look at you, he says. Half your sebaceous glands are shut down. Your white Ks are low. You haven't been taking your UV either, have you? Karako doesn't answer. Mr. Canton continues to draw samples on her left. All the other at the other side of the table, the redhead offers what she probably thinks is a reassuring smile, mostly hidden behind the oval mouthpiece. Down at Karako's feet, just in front of the hatchway, Prodmaster stands motionless. Yes, too much time sealed up in that dive skin, says Mr. Canton. Did you ever take it off? Even outside? The redhead leans forward confidentially. It's important, Judy. There could be health complications. We really should know if you ever opened up outside. For an emergency of some kind, maybe. If your skin was punctured, for example. Mr. Canton affixes some kind of ocular device onto the membrane over his left eye, peers into Karako's ear. That scar on your leg, for instance. Quite large. The redhead runs a finger along the crease in Karako's calf. Yeah, one of those big fish, I guess? Karako stares up at her. You guess. That must have been a deep wound, Mr. Canton again. Is it? Is it what? A souvenir from one of those famous monsters? You don't have my medical records? It would be
It would be easier if you'd save us the trouble of looking them up, the redhead explained.
You in a hurry?
Prodmaster takes a step forward. Not really. We can wait. But in the meantime, maybe we should get those eye caps out.
No. The thought scares her to the core. She's not sure why.
You don't need them anymore, Miss Karako.
A smile, a civilized baring of teeth.
You can relax. You're on your way home.
Fuck that. They stay in. She sits up, feels the leads tearing off her flesh. Suddenly, her arms are pinned. Mr. Canton on one side, the redhead on the other. Fuck you! She lashes out with one foot. It goes low, catches Prodmaster's shock stick, and flips it right out of the holster and onto the deck. Prodmaster jumps back out of the cubby, leaving his weapon behind. Suddenly, Karako's arms are free. Mr. Canton and the redhead are backing right off, squeezing along the walls of the compartment as though desperate to avoid physical contact. As well you might be, she thinks, grinning. Don't try your cute little power games with me, assholes. The Oriental shakes his head, a mixture of sadness and disapproval. Judy Karako's body hums right down in the bones and goes completely limp. She falls back onto the neoprene padding, nerves singing in the table's neuroinduction field. She tries to move, but all her motor synapses are shorted out. The machines in her chest twitch and stutter. Stutter. I lost my place. The machines in her chest twitch and stutter, listening for orders, interpreting static.
Her lungs size flat under its own weight. She can't summon the strength to fill it up again. They're tying her down. Wrists, ankles, chest, all strapped and cinched back against the table. She can't even blink. The humming stops. Air rushes down her throat and fills her chest. It feels good to gasp again. How's her heart? Prodmaster. Good. Bit of defib at first, but okay now. Mr. Canton bends over from the head of the table. Maggot skin stretched across a human face. It's okay, Miss Karako. We are just here to help you. Can you understand? She tries to talk. It's an effort. G- Go? What? This is Scanlon's work, right? Scanlon's fucking revenge. Mr. Canton looks up at someone beyond Karako's field of view. Industrial psych, the redhead's voice. No one important. He looks back down. Miss Karako, I don't know what you're talking about. We're going to take your eye caps out now. It won't do you any good to struggle. Just relax. Hands hold her head in position. Karako clamps her eyes shut. They pry the left one open. She stares into something like a big hypo with a disc on the end. It settles on her eye cap, bonds with a faint sucking sound. It pulls away. Light floods in like acid. She wrenches her head to one side and shuts her eye against the stinging. Even filtered through her closed eyelid, the light burns, an orange fire bringing tears. Then they have her again, twisting her head forward, fumbling at her face. Turn the lights down, you idiot! She's photosensitive! The redhead? Sorry, we kept them at half. I thought. The light dims. Her eyelids go black. Her irises haven't had to work for almost a year, the redhead snaps. Give her a chance to adjust, for Christ's sake. She's in charge here? Footsteps. A rattle of instruments. Sorry about that, Miss Karako. We've lowered the lights now. Is that better? Go away. Leave me alone. Miss Karako, I'm sorry, but we still have to remove your other cap. She keeps her eyes squeezed shut. They pull the cap out of her face anyway. The straps loosen around her body, drop off. She hears them backing away. Miss Karako, we've turned the lights down. You can open your eyes. The lights. I don't care about the fucking lights. She curls up on the table and buries her face in her hands. She doesn't look so tough now, does she? Shut up, Burton. You can be a real asshole sometimes, you know that? The sound of an airtight hatch hissing shut. A dense, close silence settles on Karako's eardrums. An electrical hum. Judy, the redhead's voice. Not in person, this time. From a speaker somewhere. We don't want this to be any worse than it has to be. Karako holds her knees tightly against her chest. She can feel the scars there, a raised web of old tissue from the time they cut her open. Eyes still shut, she runs her fingers along the ridges. I want my eyes back. But all she has now are these naked, fleshy things that anyone can see. She opens them the merest crack, peeks between her fingers. She's alone. We have to know some things, Judy, for your own good. We need to know how you found out. Found out what? She cries, her face in her hands. I was just exercising. It's okay, Judy. There's no hurry. You can rest now, if you want. Oh, and there are clothes in the drawer on your right. She shakes her head. She doesn't care about clothes. She's been naked in front of worse monsters than these. It's only skin. I want my eyes. Chapter 4 Alibis. Dead air from the speaker. One sec. Ah, good. Okay, so they're indoors, I guess. Chapter 4 Alibis. Dead air from the speaker. Did you copy that? Brander says after 5 seconds have passed.
Yes, of course.
The line hums for a second.
It just comes as a bit of a shock, that's all. It's just very bad news.
Clark frowns and says nothing.
Maybe she got detoured by a current at the thermocline?
That's not a question.
Maybe she got detoured by a current at the thermocline,
The speaker suggests.
or caught up in a Langmuir cell. Are you sure she isn't still above the scattering layer somewhere?
Of course we're and of course we're Nakata bursts out and stops. Ken Lubin has just laid a cautionary hand on her shoulder. There's a moment's silence. It is night up there, Brander says finally. Finally. The deep scattering layer rises with darkness, spreads thin near the surface until daylight chases it back down. And we'd be able to get a voice channel even if sonar couldn't get through. But maybe we should go up there ourselves and look around.
No, that won't be necessary, says the speaker. In fact, it might be dangerous until we know more about what happened to Katako.
So we don't even look for her? Nakata looks at the others, outrage and astonishment mingling on her face. She could be hurt. She could be.
Excuse me, Miss.
Nakata! Alice Nakata! I cannot believe.
Miss Nakata, we are looking for her. We've already scrambled a search team to scour the surface, but you're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. You simply don't have the resources to cover the necessary volume.
You simply don't? Or we simply don't? Or in general? Ah, whatever. A deep breath carried flawlessly down 400 kilometers of fiber op.
On the other hand, if Miss Katako is at all mobile, she'll most likely try to make it back to BB. If you want to search, your best odds are to look close to home.
Nakata looks helplessly around the room. Lubin stands expressionless. After a moment, he puts one finger to his lips. Brander glances back and forth between them. Lenny Clark looks away.
And you don't have any idea what might have happened to her?
The GA asks. Brander grits his teeth. I said some kind of sonar spike. No detail. We thought you might be able to tell us something.
I'm sorry, we don't know. It's just unfortunate that she wandered so far from BB. The ocean, well, not always safe. It's even possible a squid got her. She was at the right depth.
Nakata's head is shaking. No, she whispers.
Be sure and call if anything turns up, the speaker says. We're setting up the search plan now, so if there's nothing else.
There is, Lubin says.
Oh?
There's an unmanned installation a few clicks northwest of us, recently installed.
Really?
You don't know about it?
Hang on, I'm punching it up.
The speaker falls briefly silent.
Got it. My God, that's way out of your backyard. I'm surprised you even picked it up.
What is it? Lubin says. Clark watches him, the hairs on her neck stirring.
Seismology rig, it says here. OSU put it down there for some study on natural radioactives and tectonics. You should really keep away from it. It's a bit hot. Carrying some calibration isotopes.
Unshielded?
Apparently.
Doesn't that scramble the onboard? Lubin wants to know. Nakata stares at him, open-mouthed and angry. Who cares? Judy's missing! She's got a point. Lubin barely even talks to the other rifters. Coming from him, this interchange with the drybacks almost qualifies as babbling.
Says here it's an optical processor.
the speaker says after a brief pause. Radiation doesn't bother it. But I think Al. Ms. Nakata is right. Your first priority. Lubin reaches past Brander and kills the connection. Hey, Brander says sharply. Nakata gives Lubin a blank, angry stare and disappears from the hatchway. Clark hears her retreat into her cubby and dog the hatch. Brander looks up at Lubin. Maybe it hasn't dawned on you, Ken, but Judy just might be dead. We're kind of upset about that. Alice especially. Lubin nods, expressionless. So I've got to wonder why you chose this moment to grill the GA about the technical specs on a fucking seismic rig. That's not what it is, Lubin says. Yeah? Brander rises, twisting up out of the console chair. And just what? Mike, says Clark. What? She shakes her head. They said an optical CPU. So the fuck what? Brander stops in mid-epithet. Anger drains from his face. Not a gel, Clark says. A chip. That's what they're saying. But why lie to us? Brander asks. When we can just go out there and feel. They don't know we can do that, remember? She lets out a little smile, like a secret shared between friends. They don't know anything about us. All they've got is their files. Not anymore, Brander reminds her. Now they've got Judy. They've got us too, Lubin adds. Quarantined. Alice, it's me. A soft voice through hard metal. Come. Clark pulls the hatch open, steps through. Alice Nakata looks up from her pallet as the hatch sighs shut. Almond eyes, dark and startling, reflect in the dimmed light. One hand goes to her face. Oh, excuse me, I'll. She fumbles at the bedhead compartment where her eye caps float in plastic vials. Hey, no problem. Clark reaches out, stops just short of touching Nakata's arm. I like your eyes. I've always. Well, I should not be sulking in here anyway, Nakata says, rising. I'm going outside. Alice, I am not going to just let her disappear out there. Are you coming? Clark sighs. Alice, the GA's right. There's just too much volume. If she's still out there, she knows where we are. If? Where else would she be? Clark looks at the deck, reviewing possibilities. I I think the drybacks took her, she says at last. I think they'll take us too if we go after her. Nakata stares at Clark with disquieting human eyes. Why? Why would they do that? I don't know. Nakata sags back on the pallet. Clark sits down beside her. Neither woman speaks for a while. I'm sorry, Clark says at last. She doesn't know what else to say. We all are. Alice Nakata stares at the floor. Her eyes are bright, but not overflowing. Not all, she whispers. Ken seemed more interested in. Ken had his reasons. They're lying to us, Alice. They always lied to us, Nakata says softly, not looking up. And then, I should have been there. Why? I don't know. If there'd been two of us, maybe. Then we'd have lost both of you. You don't know that. Maybe it wasn't the drybacks at all. Maybe she just ran into something living. Clark doesn't speak. She's heard the same stories Nakata has. Confirmed reports of people getting eaten by Archie date back over 100 years. Not many, of course. Humans and giant squid don't run into each other that often. Even rifters swim too deep for such encounters. As a general rule. That's why I stopped going up with her. Did you know that? Nakata shakes her head, remembering. We ran into something alive up midwater. It was horrible. Some kind of jellyfish, I think. It pulsed, and it had these thin, watery tentacles that stretched out of sight, just hanging there in the water. And it had all these stomachs, like fat, squirming slugs. And each one had its own mouth, and they were all opening and closing. Clark screws up her face. Sounds lovely. I didn't even see it. It was quite translucent, and I was not looking, and I bumped into it, and it started ejecting pieces of itself. The main body just went completely dark and pulled into itself and pulsed away, and all these shed stomachs and mouths and tentacles were left behind. They were all glowing and writhing as though they were in pain. I think I'd stop going up there too after that. The strange thing was, I envied it in a way. Nakata's eyes spill over, but her voice doesn't change. It must be nice to just be able to cut yourself off from the parts that give you away. Clark smiles, imagining. Yes. She realizes, suddenly, that only a few centimeters separate her from Alice Nakata. They're almost touching. How long have I been sitting here? She wonders. She shifts on the pallet, pulls away out of habit. Judy didn't see it that way, Nakata's saying. She felt sorry for the pieces. I think she was almost angry with the main body. Do you believe it? She said it was this blind, stupid blob. She said, what did she say? Fucking typical bureaucracy. First sign of trouble, it sacrifices the very parts that keep it fed. That's what she said. Clark smiles. That sounds like Judy. She never takes shit from anyone, Nakata says. She always fights back. I like that about her. I could never do that. When things get bad, I just. She glances at the little black device stuck on the wall beside her pillow. I dream. Clark nods and says nothing. She can't remember Alice Nakata ever being so talkative. It's so much better than VR. You have so much more control. In VR, you are stuck with someone else's dreams. So I hear. You have never tried it? Nakata asks. Lucid dreaming? A couple of times. I never got into it. No? Clark shrugs. My dreams don't have much detail. Or too much, sometimes. She nods at Nakata's machine. Those things wake me up just enough to notice how vague everything is. Or sometimes, when there is any detail, it's something really stupid. Worms crawling through your skin or something. But you can control that. That is the whole point. You can change it. In your dreams, maybe. But you have to see it first. Just sort of spoiled the effect for me, I guess. And mostly there were these big, vague gaps. Ah, a flicker of a smile. For myself, that is not a problem. The world is pretty vague to me even when I am awake. Well, Clark smiles back tentatively. Whatever works. More silence. I just wish I knew, Nakata says finally. I know. You knew what happened to Carl. It was bad, but you knew. Yes. Nakata glances down. Clark follows, notices that her own hands have somehow clasped around Nakata's. She supposes it's a gesture of support. It feels okay. She squeezes gently. Nakata looks back up. Her dark, naked eyes still startle somehow. Lenny, she did not mind me. I pulled away and I dreamed, and sometimes I just went crazy and she put up with all of it. She understood. She understands. We're rifters, Alice. Clark hesitates, decides to risk it. We all understand. Except Ken. You know, I think maybe Ken understands more than we give him credit for. I don't think he meant to be insensitive before. He's on our side. He is very strange. He is not here for the same reason we are. And what reason is that? Clark asks. They put us here because this is where we belong, Nakata says, almost whispering. With Ken, I think they just didn't dare put him anywhere else. Brander's on his way downstairs when she gets back to the lounge.
How's Alice?
Dreaming, Clark says. She's okay.
None of us are okay, Brander says. Borrowed time all around, if you ask me.
She grunts. Where's Ken?
He left. He's never coming back.
What?
He went over, like Fisher.
Bullshit. Ken's not like Fisher. He's the farthest thing from Fisher.
We know that.
Brander jerks a thumb at the ceiling.
They don't. He went over. That's the story he wants us to sell upstairs, anyway.
Why?
You think that motherfucker told me? I agreed to play along for now, but I don't mind telling you I'm getting a bit tired of his bullshit.
Brander climbs down a rung, looks back.
I'm heading back out myself. Gonna check out the carousel. I think some serious observations are in order.
Want some company? Brander shrugs.
Sure.
Actually, Clark remarks, just company doesn't cut it anymore, does it? Maybe we'd better be, what's the word?
Allies.
Brander says. She nods. Allies.
And that is going to do it for today. I gotta run. Sorry about the short one. Next week's going to be even shorter, I think. That's only like 20 pages. It's pretty short. It's important, though. It's not even 20 pages. Ah, shoot. I might have to dig into part 7. How long is part 7? Part 7's not very long. It's actually between the two, it's like 50 pages, so it's actually kind of long. Whatever. We'll do this in individual parts. Next week I've got to make it short anyway, so it's fine. Alrighty, so hope people dug it. Things are finally moving. Plot components are starting to resolve. Isn't that nice? Um, we're getting some hints, and if you've read it before, you know what those hints are going to eventually lead to. And I'm like, ooh, buddy, good stuff coming this way. Well, interesting things anyway. Pieces are starting to be able to be put together. You now have enough information to start making conclusions, as opposed to where we've been before now, where it's just been like, why is any of this happening? What's going on? Yeah, it's going to be short segment. It's probably not even going to be an hour long next week. Um, it's pretty picky, and it's like 15, 17 pages. It's as opposed to my normal ones, which are closer to 50, 30, 30-ish pages. I just have schedule problems right now that I'm dealing with. It sucks. Um, so yeah, I got to run. But thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. If you're watching this after the fact, as most likely people are, I do these live at noon Eastern Standard Time on Fridays, because it's Free Read Fridays. It's a nice bit of alliteration there, where I read short stories and indeed entire novels aloud. I'm only going to be able to do part 6, because part 6 and 7 is like 50, 60 pages, and I am not going to have 2 hours, 3 hours free. Sorry. I apologize. Um, no, your puppy dog eye emoji is not going to work on me this time. We'll see what my schedule looks like. It's looking bad right now. It's looking dire. It's November's a long month. November is proving to be a very long month for a number of reasons. So yeah, Free Read Fridays, where I read short stories and indeed entire novels aloud. Right now, we're most of the way, 3/4-ish of the way through. 3/4? Near as damn it. 3/4 of the way through. Starfish by Peter Watts. Um, his first released novel, as far as I know. Um, he had some short stories before this. I don't think he had a short story collection yet. He might have. I'd have to go and double check his bibliography. because I don't remember offhand. Pretty sure this is his first published novel. Anyway, I do other streams throughout the week. I have a Mecha Monday stream, which is going to be intermittent throughout this month because of same aforementioned scheduling issues. Jobs are fun. And a Warframe Wednesdays stream where I do Warframe. That also is going to be intermittent. Should be okay for the next 2 weeks, but after that, things get dicey. Alrighty, with that, I gotta run. Thanks for tuning in. Stay safe, stay sane, be decent to each other, and thanks for voting, I guess. Yeah, thanks for voting. If you're an American, member, a citizen of the United States of America, thank you for voting. I don't care who you voted for. I mean, I do, but it doesn't matter. Use the system before it uses you. Well, it'll use you anyway. But hey, just look on and gaze at the entropy, okay? Okay. 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 Bye. On that happy note. See you all later. Until next time.